Okay, another video. This one is, as you can see from this chart, tremendously busy. I point out, and I know there are a lot of people that have been visiting my website over the years. It's like, oh, come on, central banks don't matter. The market's awesome. It's going to do what it's going to do. It's random, and central banks don't matter. Really? I can't believe people still have that view. Okay, whatever. If this video does not convince you that central banks are the only game in town and are all that matters, then dude, I can't help you. All right? All right, on with the show. This is a very busy chart. The last video I did, I talked about Greedometer 8 or mini Greedometer 8 sequence and mini Greedometer 9. And this one's going to be all about mini Greedometer 10. And man, is it busy. Of course, it ends with basically here, with the birth of G11, which is the election night when, as you know, because you've seen other videos, SPIX and Dow futures were limit down, so that's 7% in less than 2 hours that night. So the regulators shut it off, shut the futures market off, and well, spare billions of dollars of liquidity comes in from the Swiss National Bank and the BOJ. Anyway, that's how the story ends in terms of the G10 story. How does it start? Well, we know from the last video it started there in January of 2015, right? And what you get is look at the baseline from this one, about this steep, about this steep. This sequence started out with an estimated baseline. Yeah, there's my first estimate there. An estimated baseline. This is pretty similar to these two. It's a little bit steeper, but it's in the same ballpark. So this is my first estimated baseline for the G10 sequence. And those of you, well, many of you will remember the stock market crash or dip, violent dip that was blamed on the banking system in China in August of 2015. It's like, oh, it was a surprise, no one saw it coming, and by the way, let's blame it on China, and their banking system. Really? All right, so we got the birth point. There's my estimated baseline. We got the top line, which look at how ugly this is. Look at how jagged this is. It's like, hey, come on, the other ones don't look like that, right? This is how the sequence starts off. Get a little dip, get some happiness, and on with the show, right? Humpty Dumpty, drop, back up again, on with the show. This one, no, continual. So what's the difference? Well, this is the difference, right? Every week, every second week, we got the PBOC mostly threatening to do all sorts of things, taking actions and threatening to do actions, threatening to put people in jail for shorting the stock market, all sorts of things, and the ECB piling on, right? Threatening this, that, and the other thing. And of course, till that comes to an end, and then we get this sheer of, oh, we give up. Look at this. Spend some time, pause it, read all this stuff. Okay, it blows your mind. Anyway, all right. So all of this, all these actions, and this is a proof. This is a really very valuable piece of insight. But if a central bank takes an action and it isn't epic in scale, like starting a QE program or something like that, if the central bank is A, not the Fed, and B, takes an action or threatens to take an action that is considerable but not epic in scale, what you'll get is this continual sort of popping up of the top line, popping up of mini Greedometer values, right? Setting increasingly, you're seeing new top lines. The same baseline doesn't move because it's not the Fed. So you're not changing the end of the story. You're not changing the end of the crash. You're just changing, you're sort of like warping these new top lines that basically end in the same spot, but they don't change the end point. Okay, that's if it's the Fed, no, then this basically gets warped, and also the baseline gets flatter and flatter, pushing the end point of the crash out. And that's the difference between a central bank action by the Fed versus non-Fed central banks. Anyway, interesting story. So those are, a lot of you remember that crash of what, August 2015. It got, as I said, it got blamed on the banking system in China. Lots of evidence to support that. I'm not saying that wasn't true. It's basically just the straw that broke the camel's back. That's all. So this here is my estimated first baseline point. There was a big stock market drop here, a little bit of a reprieve. Actually, there's no reprieve. It kept plummeting the next week, and then Dudley, the New York Fed president, Dudley chimed in and said, well, we probably won't see a rate hike next time that happens. So these are weekly close values of the SPIX, and these are weekly close values of the mini Greedometer. So what you're not seeing is just before Dudley chimed in, mini Greedometer values were around here-ish midweek, and they would have finished the week down around there with that trend continuing, okay? Which would have led to a SPIX south of the 1800s. It probably would have been the 1700s that week, okay, in terms of the SPICs. So that's where we would have seen a mini greedometer value. We would have spent about I don't know, 4, 5, 6 weeks climbing back to the top line, and then wow, this would have been violent. This would have been epic. Probably easily a 40% drop, easily a 40% drop. Okay, in the SPICs, or that would have happened over the next month, and that's why this had to be stopped because it's too ugly. So what happens was Dudley chimed in here. These purple diamonds. What they are is this. This is the market breaking. Either the NYSE or the NASDAQ or the CBOE or the CME or the largest, say maybe Frankfurt or London, some major stock or bond market, mostly in the US, broke here, 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 and here. And again, you're only seeing the weekly close values. You're not seeing the hair-raising stuff that was happening midweek when the values were this, was down there. Again, this was down here. All these things were considerably lower. There was a lot more scariness in the system. There's a great example there, right? This, again, the night of the election, we turn off the futures market and jam it back the other way. Otherwise, again, it was 7% down. I mean, it was down here, okay? Anyway, back to the story. So Fed chimes in and says, well, we're not going to do anything bad. We're not going to, raise rates. So that warps the baseline to my estimate is around here. Why I'm estimating that? Because things got ugly again in January of 2016, which nobody saw coming, blah, 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 blah. And so we see an action here. We see all these things being threatened here. Dudley, Bullard, and the PBOC threatening all sorts of things that week in unison, stopping that drop from being lower and preventing the baseline point from being seen yet again. More threats, all sorts of non-stop threats here, or warping. So my estimate is the baseline gets warped to about that shallow, one of these here. We likely would have seen the baseline again here, but no, we get more threats here, okay? This thing gets flatter and flatter. Look at, some of you are probably noticing, gee, this is approaching. Here we go. English is my first language. What can I tell you? Approaching the baseline of the 2007-8-9 crash, which a lot of you think, well, that was hair raising fast. No, this was way faster and would have been way, way, way faster. So this whole process has been slowed by the Fed and all sorts of other central banks, but mostly by the Fed, promising to not raise rates and stuff like that, making it slower and slower till eventually we get to the point before the election, just before the election, again, all these stock market breaks, where at that point the baseline was probably pretty close to here, somewhere in terms of steepness or flatness. Had the regulators not intruded in the night of the election, I can say with very, very high confidence that the SPICs would have plummeted within 1 to 2 weeks after the election. And look, this is not a red, blue, this is not a Hillary Trump situation. The Greedo doesn't know politics. Either way, the SPICs was going to drop at least 20, very likely 25, and maybe 30% actually within the 2 weeks that would follow. But that would have been inconvenient, so the self-protection mechanism kicked in, shut off the futures market, and bring in the liquidity from other central banks, mostly the SNB, Swiss National Bank, and jam it back the other way. And there you go. That's what happened to Mini Greedometer 10. And it's actions like that are why I tongue-in-cheek say I'm still working on my first billion. What are you going to do? All right. I hope you found this insightful and helpful. On with the show.